Well, hello and welcome. Tonight, how about have you ever thought maybe you wanted to be a writer? Maybe there's a writer inside of you somewhere waiting to be awakened. I think there's a writer in all of us, yet not many of us can make a career out of it and a profession out of it. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Our guest, our featured guest, Lysa Allman Baldwin, is going to share a lot of information with you. So hold tight. This is Leading Ladies, Leaving Legacies. I am Joy Ruffin, a signature style specialist and professional speaker, creator of Leading Ladies, Leaving Legacies. And every week, Wednesdays, I come to you with a leading lady, a featured guest, and we talk about everything that relates to her transformation, her journey, internal and external, and all the good, the bad, and we don't talk about the ugly. That comes into play sometimes, but it's always informational, educational, and inspirational. And we're going to talk about a lot of other things that will relate and help and support you on your journey. Aren't we all on a journey? Of course we are. So let's meet our guest tonight. Our featured guest is Lysa Allman Baldwin. Lysa, hello and welcome. So good to have you here.
Good evening, Joy, and thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Listen, I was saying to you a wee bit earlier before we started, there's a writer, I think, in all of us. Not many of us can make a career of it. So I want you to tell us a wee bit about how you got started becoming and doing what you're doing.
Well, it's really interesting because it was really about 25 years ago when I was working in corporate America and was very good at it and had good skills and all of that, but I hated working in corporate America. So after about 20 years of being on the corporate ship, I knew I wanted to jump off of it and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And so I kind of started looking at what I'd like to do and also what I thought I could make a good living at. But I knew I wanted both things. I had done one or the other before, and that wasn't sufficient for me. And short version is I was living in San Francisco at the time, and there was an African-American owned newspaper in the area where I lived. And I thought, well, I wonder if they let people write things for them, you know, not expecting to get paid or anything like that. I had a day job. And I went in and talked to the editor, and she shoved a whole pile of books at me and said, "Can you write a book review?" And I said, "I don't know. I've never done it before." And she said, "Well, here." And that kind of started it. So once I got comfortable with that, she started sending me out on some assignments. And then once I got a little comfortable with that, I went to another publication. And then after I looked at that would be something maybe I could do, and I really enjoyed it, I decided to give it 2 years, keep my day job. And if it seemed like I could make a living at it, I would jump ship. And almost 2 years to the day, I jumped ship. And 25 years later, I've jumped back on the ship a few times over time for various reasons. But I've been doing it for 25 years and absolutely love it.
Let me ask you this, because I'm sure there are people out in the audience who are here now and who those will come for the replay. When did you know that you had that gift, that skill, that talent within you? And I'm sure we're always developing whatever our talents and gifts are. But when did you know that you wanted to be a writer?
Well, I had always done it in the corporate settings where I worked, and I was just good at it. I just always had an aptitude for words and an aptitude for people, and always loved interviewing people for articles and questions. And, you know, again, it was corporate setting, and it was just really dry in corporate setting. And so when I found that newspaper in my neighborhood, I thought, well, I wonder if I could do this writing that I like in a more creative setting. And that's how I got started with that. So it's not even that I had a light bulb moment that said, oh, I have skills as a writer. It just kind of evolved that way.
I like that. And what I heard you say initially, and I love this, is that what more and more of us in whatever arena we're in, we need to start doing. You took the initiative. You decided to go out and quest and ask and seek maybe an entree into what you wanted to do. And I think that was really, really good. Tell us, what is it about what you're doing now that excites? By the way, let's back up a little bit. We are all in this pandemic, right? We're in this crisis situation that's difficult for most of us. And no matter how you're into the holistic and the spiritual arena, you still have to deal with certain things. How has that affected what you're doing now and the work that you're doing?
Well, it has affected me in like you said, it's affected everyone in a variety of different ways. Most profoundly, it has affected me in the way that I am an empty nester without a nest. I gave up my home 8 months ago. It was my 15-year plan when I got both kids off to college, was to sell everything I owned and just travel around in my car. And internationally, I'd leave the car when I flew to do my travel writing and motivational speaking and my book talks and all of that. So when the pandemic hit, I had just finished a speaking engagement. It was this past March. And that night, everything was fine. The next day, everything was shut down. And so I really had to bop around not having a home to go and quarantine in or that type of thing. So it's been interesting, challenging, but interesting.
I like that bop around in a way. And I like the way you put it, challenging, but interesting.
Right.
Share with us a little bit about that, because all of us in different ways and means, we're dealing with this crisis, this sequestered lockdown that we're all involved with. So how did you manage that? How did you maneuver and navigate through that to find where you're stationed now, which I think is in Kansas City, right? You're in Kansas City now. But prior to this hitting us, beginning, I think, maybe of March, middle of March till now, how did you navigate through that to where you are now?
Well, how I get around normally, which started again last August, was wherever I am doing a speaking engagement, where I'm doing a workshop, where I'm doing a book talk, where I'm doing a travel writing piece, or where I'm house sitting. And I was scheduled to house sit in Florida for about a week and a half. And when the pandemic hit, the homeowners were gone and they couldn't fly back home and I couldn't go anywhere. And so I ended up staying at their home for 3.5 months. So it was me and the animals, and they were so nice and gracious, and they said we considered it a win-win. And so, with that took care of the first 3.5 months. However, I was scheduled to be in Arizona for a month, and then California for a month, and then all those engagements, some of them went away, some of them were postponed indefinitely, some of them turned to online. So I really had to rework where I was going to be going and everything. So I was there for 3.5 months. Then I went into Tennessee for a little bit. Then I came back through Kansas City, which is where I lived the 19 years before I took off for this adventure. And then I went to San Francisco for 3 weeks, and I'm back here in Kansas City for a month. So the rest is really kind of unscripted. I just have to go with the flow, really.
I like that. Well, I like it in that you were able to navigate and maneuver and make the best of that situation, which for all of us, regardless of whether we were home-based or not, and it's still not the most comfortable time, but we're making the best of it. Tell us a little bit, Lysa, about your featured writing as far as travel, because hubby and I travel extensively. We love to travel. So tell us a little bit about how you got into doing writing articles for traveling. I find that fascinating, because that means that you have to have a special eye for a lot of stuff. So share with us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, my first entree to traveling was when I was a young child. My mother took my sisters and I everywhere that she could afford to take us. They were, mostly car trips, but we did do some flying to see things. And just, she was very into showing us cultures and people and food, and that there were people around the world who were very similar to us but had different everything: music, food, traditions, all of that stuff. And so again, when I was living in San Francisco back in the 90s, when I was working for that African American newspaper, there was a black travel website that was just coming on. This is when the internet was really just coming on. And the owner, he worked in technology, but he traveled for work. And he went to 3 of the big cities in the United States. And he had started out with this Afrocentric map, just kind of showing, where Joe's juke joint would be, and Johnny's barbecue and things like that. And it was just a very rudimentary map. And that is called, and I do want to mention them because they were really pivotal in me getting started, called soulofamerica.com. And so I approached them and I said, hey, I travel all the time for fun. how would you like to have someone write more expansively on those areas? And that's how it started from there.
I love the way you initiate and you're proactive. You take the lead and you go and do what needs to be done. And I love the way you got involved in the travel and the writing of it, because exposure is so important,
Very.
especially for young kids. And more and more and more, I think parents are beginning to realize that, because to be able to see and to experience it one-on-one is very different from reading it in a book.
Absolutely.
What do you, when you go out to do your motivational speaking, what topics do you speak on most?
Really living authentically. We are a society that walks around living very inauthentically. There are things that have to do with, where we live and how much we make, and what we drive, and what type of home we live in, and we're all walking around trying to keep up with the Joneses, and it never works. It never works. And when we have struggles and challenges, often we don't share them with people because we feel deficient or have low self-esteem around issues, or think nobody else is going through the issues that we're going through. And then we get to, sometimes some of us, to rock bottom moments, and we're forced to either give up altogether or change. And so that's really what I talk to people about, is when you are authentic and raw with people, it gives other people permission to be authentic and raw as well. And that's the only way that change and transformation comes.
I completely agree. And that's the buzzword that's going around now, because we're all in the thick of transformation. Pivot, change, transformation, all one and the same. But here's what you said to me that I absolutely love. And you spoke to that in a different way. And you said the importance of understanding that nothing happens to you. Everything happens through you and for you. So you spoke to that, but speak to that a wee bit more, because that's really timely.
Well, we can all come up with a list of the who's and what's happened to us, and because of that, our life is like XYZ. Now, you have to be careful with that, because we certainly don't want to say that maybe someone who's physically abused, that was, didn't happen to them, that happened through them and for them. But what I tell people in my motivational speaking is that everybody has a what happened story. This happened to me. I got a divorce. I was laid off from my job. Somebody passed away. I lost my house in a fire. There's all kinds of different what happened. Everybody has a what happened story.
True.
The key is, what are you going to do with it? It doesn't mean that you don't have your grieving period or have to work through it, but is, what are you going to do with it? Because there's always a lesson and a blessing in something, that an experience that you had.
I quite agree with that, because it's, for some reason, while you were saying that, Lysa, what stuck in my mind is Dickens. I was at one time a voracious reader, and I remember this Dickens, the best of times and the worst of times. And that's what we're pretty much going through now in numerous ways, contingent upon the environment, the people, circumstances, and all of that. And this word, authentic, these buzzwords that go around and pivot, authentic, I think it's not really understood, because people know what you look like when you wake up in the morning, and you're crawling out of bed with no makeup and your hair and everything else. So you don't have to go and show up on screen like that. But some people think that this being who you are, where you are 24/7 is what we need to be. I don't think that's the true meaning of authentic. Can you speak to that a wee bit? What does authentic really mean to you?
Well, to me, it means not trying to be somebody else. There's that phrase that says, be yourself, everybody else is already taken.
Exactly.
You just have to, like I said before, there's people want to put labels on you, or think that, women can't do this, or you have to be at this sexual orientation or gender, or you have to be this age, or you have to be this, and we all, in our own ways, some small and some big, try to live up to those things. Sometimes we get kind of lost in that, because we're kind of marinating in that kind of society. But you just have to be you. It doesn't mean that you won't grow and change, but you have to go with your passions. Don't go with the career that your family says you should do this.
Right.
When we start with the shoulds and have tos and everything, then we're not doing the desires and the wants of
Shoulda,
our
woulda,
lives.
couldas, yes, and you don't want no one wants to be put in a box, and
Right.
unfortunately, from time to time, that's what people do because that's their environment and that's their upbringing, so they can't segue from something
Right.
to another so that they grow. This thing called change is always in the air.
Yes.
And we have to learn to adjust and make adjustments and changes to fit. Because if we don't, we're like stuck in the mud and we can't move. And that's not good for the person who's stuck and for the people around them. So I
Right.
really get, and I like the way you explained what authentic means to you.
Mm.
What is the number one comment or suggestion or idea that you get from the groups that you speak to that you share with them? What is it that they get out of what you're sharing most that you've heard and that you know?
There's a few things. Oh, the comment I get the most, I think, and I'm really quite proud of it, that it's really a lot of it comes out not only from my speaking, but my workshops, is how we uncover our old childhood stories. I talk a
Yes.
lot about my childhood stories, and it's not the fact of disparaging the people who raised us, it's the interpretations we made about the situations at the time or the things that people said and did, especially when we were younger and didn't have words to language them. But when we get older, we can look at those stories and see if the facts of what happened in our life actually match our interpretation of the facts. And usually our interpretation was way off. It was way off. And so we end up living this life that is shadowed by these old childhood stories. But once we can start digging in there and seeing which of those stories are not serving us any longer and reframe them so that they are actually true to who we are today, then we can actually live a life of passion, authenticity, and purpose.
Lisa, I love that because there's a lot that's in what you just said. And one of the things that we know for sure, I don't know where that expression comes from, but we've all heard it, is that our childhood is our childhood and it gave us our foundation. But
Right.
yet we began to grow. And if we have that mind that's wanting to constantly expand and grow, we know that our parents did the best that they could under the circumstances. And then it's up to us to grow and expand and expose ourselves to other circumstances, situations, ideas that will help us to be all that we're here to be. So there's no
Absolutely.
blame. But
Right.
what happens is that we get stuck in that childhood growth pattern. And then we start to blame people for what parents and the relatives for what we have to be responsible for. I like the
Right.
way you said that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm
Absolutely.
going to ask you to step into the green room for just a quick second. And I want to say something to the audience, and I'll be right back with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right.
What can I tell you? Writing, it's an art, it's a gift, and we all have different gifts that we bring to the table. And what I want to do is invite you to connect with us here and join my Leading Ladies, Leaving Legacies Facebook group. You would be a welcome addition there because what we do is we explore all the change and transformation and how we reinvent ourselves. And certainly we're in that cycle now. My work predominantly is with women who are in their second act, regardless to age, who are struggling with the issue of styling themselves. They're like lost and confused and they never know, should I do this? Is that all right? And then they get dressed and they go and they say, that inner struggle. We erase that. And then they find that they're spending way, way too much money. What I want to support you in doing is finding your signature style so that you stand out and shine, like Lysa said, in your authentic self. And our femininity and all that goes with it is beginning to rise again because, ladies, it's our time. But I want you simply to join my Facebook group, Leading Ladies, Leaving Legacies. And I also invite you to come here and allow me to interview you and for you to share your story. I love good company, and I know you would be. I can't wait to see and to meet and to connect with you. Now, back to Lysa. Lysa, let me ask you this. I want to get to the book because the book that you just wrote, I love the title. I cried and people loved me anyway. Now, share with us, first off, how you came to that title, and then tell us a little bit about the book.
Okay. So the title, I believe, was given to me by God, spirit, whatever you people call their higher power. And
Uh-huh.
so basically, about 5 years ago, I had an experience where in a 6 month period of time, everything in my life went to pot. One thing after the next, after the next, after the next. And unfortunately, I got to the point where I was going to check out. Even though I had a good spiritual community for support and good family support, when we get in that dark place, we can't see the forest for the trees.
Absolutely.
And I was just in my mind done. And I knew that I thought, I should say, that I was no good to anybody. At that time, I was 52 years old. My inner story was I can't do anything right. You know, I'm just taking up space, taking up air. Why am I here? But I have two kids, and I knew that I did not want to do that to them because I knew what that would look like on the other side for them if I committed suicide. And
Yes.
so I said, okay, God, I think I'm worthless and I want to leave, but I don't want to do this to the kids. So you have to take over. And so I ended up going back into therapy. And what the therapist had kind of recognized is that I had a lot of old childhood stories way down in the background, even though I had been to therapy before and uncovered some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so what she was telling me was that I had a low wealth operating system, is what she called it. So what she
I'm
was
sorry.
saying.
Repeat that. You had a what? A
She called it a wealth operating system. She used to use the acronym WOS, Wealth
Okay.
Operating System, and
Never heard
it's how we value who we are. Um, and so we think that, you know, when things happen around us, to us, whatever we want to say, that it diminishes our self worth. So she had a lot of work to do with me on that. But just about a couple of months after I was working with her, and I kind of took the checking out off the table because what she was saying, you know, kind of was starting to make sense. And I was so desperate to hold on to anything at that point. And
Absolutely.
I was asleep. And I remember it like it was yesterday, 3 o'clock in the morning, and Spirit woke me up in the middle of the night and said, "You're going to write a book about this experience. And it's called I Cried and People Loved Me Anyway." And I had no plans to write a book. My first thing I said to Spirit was, "Excuse me, I'm going to tell everybody in the world what a loser I am, and how everything, you know, this happened and this happened and this happened." And what I heard was yes, and this is the title. So I always stuck with that title, and that's the one thing that people tell me most resonates with them is that I cried and people loved me anyway.
Yes, for numerous reasons. I'm not a romantic, demonstrative person. So I hear people all the time saying, you know, I miss the hugs and the this, that, and the end. Well, I don't, but yet the heart is big, the caring, the compassion. And I'm
Right,
not to tears all the time, but yet it doesn't bother me. I know that when people see tears still, they think that that's a weakness. I don't see it that
right,
way. I
right,
wish I could cry more sometimes. So
right, right.
applaud that because I think that's brave to come out and say that. And a lot of people, myself included, needed to hear and to read this title. Now, this book is where? Where do we find this? Amazon, everywhere. I didn't have a chance.
Yes,
I,
and I have a
yes,
copy
go, show.
here. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you can get it on Amazon. You can also read more about it and get it on my website, which is authenticityandpurpose.com.
Mhm.
And my graphic designer came up with this, with the dark in going into the light, because that is exactly what happened in my life. I went from these dark times of telling myself these stories that were so outdated and not true into the light of my own power and worth, and a much higher level of a wealth operating system, and into my transformation. I mean, my life is so off the chain now, and I can see, going back to what you asked me about, nothing happened to you, everything happens through you and for you. I
Yes.
would never have this career that I have now, the motivational speaking and the workshops and the traveling full time and everything, if I had not hit my own rock bottom, because that's where the transformation and the growth came from.
Lysa, I get it. I really do, because back to Dickens, the worst of times and the best of times, but in the worst of times comes a reward
Right,
somewhere.
right.
When you probe and you go deep enough and you explore, it just shows up and it happens. I
Right.
just applaud you for it because I think it's a great book. I have to, well, I can only be honest, but I will get the book and I will read it. And I'm hoping I'm going to make sure that your website goes across, you show the book, and we will make sure that you get, and the whole intention is that people connect here with you and get to know you and to applaud what you're doing and support you in that. Now, let's go to something that's interesting for me, because I always like to get someone else's viewpoint. Style, manner, how you show up, it matters. So what does style mean to you, first off? And then what is your style? So applaud me with that.
I'm laughing because I'm not sure I have a style.
You
I think I'm still in post child rearing mommy, no style thing. I don't know. My kids are now 19 and 21, so I can't really use that as an excuse anymore. But I could probably use your styling expertise to tell you the truth.
Well, I love honesty. I mean, it's just so vital to me. That's part of my upbringing and background. And I love it. And I applaud you for saying that. But let me ask you this. Is it important to you how you show up, and does it matter to you? You're a professional writer. You do a lot of motivational speaking, going out to talk and to engage with people. How you show up matters. So do you feel that a style, whatever that signature style would be, would enhance or kick you up a notch? How do you see that for you?
I suppose it would take me up a notch. I'm in case you can't tell, I call it that I'm a flaming extrovert. I've never met a stranger. I'm comfortable in any situation. I could be the only whatever, only female, only Black person, only in a room with 300 people. I know nobody. I'm perfectly comfortable. So that's kind of, I guess, my style of how I show up. I just show up as myself, excited, exuberant about life. Of course, I dress, well when I have engagements and things like that. But I think if I had someone who could style me a little more with maybe the right colors to wear, and I don't know, I'm just never been a big clothes and jewelry and such person. I have the basics, but I think that might help me, perk it up a little bit. So
I love your response to this, and you're spot on. And I really appreciate how you came back to answer that, because it only matters if it matters to you. And I know that you are, and the way you said you could use help, but the truth is you're probably happy with where you are and what you're doing. And it's style and the way that one shows up. It's not that important to a lot of people. You have to kind of appreciate it. So I like to hear from women, because most of us are conditioned by our environment, and we bring into our style what we were used to and what we were surrounded with.
Right.
And oftentimes that's not the best for us, but that's depending on the individual. So thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that. Now, time flies here. So we're on our way out. So tell us, what would you like to leave the audience with? And is there anything that you want to share with us before we say so long for now? I have your website that I put up and your name, and people will connect with you in that regard. Is there anything that you want to leave us with, especially in this pandemic that we're in?
Right.
You shared a lot, but is there anything else you want to share with us before we say so long for now?
Probably. I would encourage everybody to think of this new acronym for fear. So we've all heard that fear is false evidence appearing real.
Yes.
And they also say it's future events already ruined. But if you can transform that and use this acronym instead, face everything and rise up. Face everything and rise up. We talked about how, like when you quoted Dickens, the best of times and the worst of times. There's that phrase that says, life is like a rainbow. You need both the sun and the rain for its colors to appear.
Lysa, I love that. You could not have ended for us better. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to play this over and over again, because the things that you share with us are really pivotal, paramount in our own development and growth. Thank you for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. I'm going to ask you to step into the green room, and I'll be with you in just a second. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What can I say? Time flies here. It goes too quickly. I keep saying I'm going to extend, but let me say this to you. The whole intent here is that you, whether you're here now or you come for the replay, that you align yourself. Send a friend request to the women who are here. Connect with them, because ladies, it's our time. We have a female vice president on the way. And I'm telling you right here and now, they're going to win. Whether you are of that persuasion or this is irrelevant. It's time for us to rise, connect, and unite together. So whatever you do, I want to leave you with this tip too, as far as style, because my work is all about signature style specialists and connecting with you to help you find your style. And I want you to just to remember this little tip. I call it a little joyism. Everybody, everyone, and anybody, when it comes to style, when you're shopping in the stores or online and you hear that, run. Even if you think it's for you, because anybody, everybody, BODY, and this is for everybody, it's not so. You have to get the 5 keys, the 5 elements, the 5 essentials to find out what style is best to showcase you and have you shine and glow in your element. I always appreciate your being here. I know it's not the best time. So whatever you're doing, be and stay well, take care of yourself, and look after others so that we make sure we're doing all the things that they tell us to do. I can't wait to see you again next week, same station, same time. Until then, all the best. So long for now. Cheers.